we will just, I was just talking about the tab, no, what, recapping what we discussed yesterday. So we spoke about Tableau, like what Tableau is about, and it's a visualization tool, which can be used to create dashboards, which would help the business people take their decisions and analyze their data, and then take some certain like roadmaps, and all those things. So Tableau is like any other BI reporting tool, but what makes it good is that it's very easy to create dashboards, and like even people with minimal technical know-how can actually go ahead and start creating dashboards, provided they have access to the data. Okay, so and then I'm just going to go through the slides that we went through yesterday very quickly. So what I'm showing here is actually the Tableau architecture. So we have the Tableau architecture, wherein we have the customer data, which would be lying in different parts of the world, or in different geographies or different servers. And then we have these connectors, which help us connect to those databases, data sources. And then we have these different main server components, which help us in rendering the reports, or managing the permissions and stuff. And then we have this gateway load balancers, which would actually go ahead and balance the load on the servers when we have multiple, like we have a lot of concurrent users logging in and trying to view the reports. And the tool that actually helps us create these dashboards is called the Tableau desktop, and that's what we were talking about yesterday, and we would be talking about more today. So this is actually tool, which will help you build beautiful dashboards within a very short span of time, and it will help you create all those interactive reports, using with which you can query, filter, or sort your report. Okay, and then there are two main components inside Tableau report. And inside Tableau report, when I call a Tableau report, it's ideally Tableau workbook. And a workbook is actually a collection of a lot of different reports and dashboards that you might build within the Tableau file. And each worksheet is basically the one that actually has the report, the real report that you built, the charts and stuff. So those things go into the worksheets, and a collection of worksheets, you can put these worksheets into a dashboard, and a collection of dashboards could form a workbook. So that's how it is set up. And then we spoke about the Tableau interface, so this is how it looks, it has got all these dimension and measure shell sections, and then you have this filter shelf, and then the row and the column shelf, and then you have this a small little button, which is like the show me button, which will help you create reports, even without create charts, even without you really having to do anything, just by selecting the dimension and the measure that you want to plot, you can just highlight that and then go and click on the show me. And then we just saw how to connect to the data, with which we connected to a sample data source, and also we connected to a data source through Excel data source, and then we saw we saw what are the different types of connections, basically live and the in-memory connections. And then we saw the data types, the dimensions and measures, and what the data roles, which makes like there are continuous fields and there are discrete fields. What the difference between each of these. And then we spoke about the filters and also the sorting. The sorting, we saw that there are different ways of filtering, creating a filter and creating a sort on your graph. There's a manual sort, and then there's a computed sort. So okay, so what we'll do is, we'll see these different like options which Tableau gives us to group certain things. What are groups? Groups in general mean that you're grouping a couple of items, you're putting them together, and then you're creating a single entity. So that the same meaning actually carries into the Tableau groups as well. So when you have a set of things, plotted on the graph, on the bar chart, and you want to group a few of those together, so Tableau allows you to do that very easily. I'll just show how we can actually go ahead and create these groups. just like yesterday, I would go and start with a subcategory, product subcategory here, and then I like to see my sales by each of these product category. And now I see that I would like to group these things, whichever is the furnitures, the table, chairs, and the chair mats, and these things, So if I would like to group these together, I can actually go take these things, bookcases here, and then use this paper clip here and group. So it has created a group for me here, which is actually, if you see here, it is actually grouped all these things into one, and then we have all the others as separate. So the one advantage of this is, you can actually see how this one section is faring, and then you want to see the other, how others are faring, and you can use this group in a different way in your visualization, You can actually go ahead and color it by your group, or you can actually use it in your filter. This allows us to actually group things, there's another group that I created, so even that we could use. So if I've put everything else in one, and then all the pen art supplies into one, and this will help us in filtering out a lot of things, so instead of going and manually adding each filter, either selecting or deselecting each value, you can use a group and actually do your filters. So that is how group would be helpful here. So that is about group, and there is another concept in Tableau, which is actually creation of sets. So what set does is, it is similar to grouping, but then it's slightly different in the basic concept that you can actually when you create a group, it is a set of dimensions which selected and then created the group. So I selected a couple of them, and then I created a group, and then you can see what are all in the group, so there is others, and then there are all these things here. So that is how a group gets created. But then when I create a set, so the basic difference within a group and a set is that I can go ahead and then create customer segment here, and I can go and say sales greater than 10k. I can create a conditional set, so I can go here and I say, okay, give me where sales is greater than 10k. Okay, so you can see there's the set that's created here, the one that I just now created. You can see it in the set view. Now I can plot my graph in any way, so I'll say a customer segment and then show all the profit, color it by sales, sort it, and then I can just use this. Again, you can use it in the filters, so that it just gives me a very quick filter capability here. I think everything is great. I'll have to change the setting. The condition is not. You saw that when I gave a condition, which is when I created a set with sales less than 10,000, actually everything vanished, because there is nothing that is less than 10,000 sales. So I can actually go ahead and create something which is probably like more realistic here, like a 100k, so less than 100k. So this is what happens. So whenever we have a say a sales, which is, we can define a set, and then you can keep it handy, so whenever you create any visualization and you want to filter based on a certain condition, you can quickly use that set and then you can do your filtering. So this is how a set would be helpful. So these are the two examples of groups and sets. So anybody has any questions on these two?
I lost it after you were saying how the set is different from the group. Can you show in that graph again, please?
Yeah, sure. I can show that to you. Okay, I have a set created here. So what we did for a group is that we just picked a couple of dimensions. I mean, couple of members from here from the subcategory dimension, and then we created a group. So what we ideally did was that we grouped a set of. So what we did was we added all the things, like the pen and art supply and all those things. We picked them manually and then put them into a group, and then it created one group for us, and then there is another group which says others. So everything else which do not fall into this category, subcategory, went into this others group. So that's how groups work. But in case of sets, what we did was we created a set over here. This set, I will show you this set. Just like you have a set. I created a set on the customer ID, okay, and then I said customer name basically. So I created a set on a customer name, and I gave a condition saying show me all the customers, or just put all the customers which are having profit greater than $10,000 into one set, and I'm calling it a profit greater than 10,000 set. Yeah. So what that does is, you can use this set to actually filter on your dashboard. See, if I just remove this dashboard, and you will see a whole lot of things. I mean, the graph changing basically because it's now including all the customer names, all the customers into the graph. But then probably I'm only worried about, or I want to see the guys who's got giving me the most profit. It probably most of the times might be the other way around. Where I want to see who are the customers who are giving me the least profit. So we could create a set which is a opposite of this, and then just drag it and put it into the filter, and then it will give me all the graph which is filtered on this condition basically. So the basic difference between group and a set is that group you would actually go ahead and manually pick the categories that you want to group together. Set, you can actually do that as well, and you can do a computed set, which tells you like, okay, whoever is having, give me a set wherein I want to see all the customers with lesser than 1,000 or less than 100,000 profit or something like that. So that's the major difference. These are very helpful, actually handy things, which come into play when we are creating dashboards. And there are different. You want to create different filters, predefined filters on your dashboard, so that you don't really have to go and do them manually, check them or uncheck them, and all those. So we can actually create these sets and keep them handy, and each of the dashboards, depending upon what kind of dashboard or what report we are building, we can just drag one of these into the filter, and we would have the entire view filtered on that criteria. Okay, so next I think we'll just move on to something called calculated fields. These calculated fields, this is basically, see, we would have, when we connect to a database and or any data source and get the data into Tableau, will give us dimensions and it will give us measures. But then there might be a lot of times when you see that, okay, I do not have enough all the fields that I wanted, so probably there is a calculation that you might want to do, wherein you might want to put a flag, for each row which says true or false based on whether it's making profit or loss, or you want to calculate some ratio, sales is not equal to zero, then discount or something of these kinds, or you want to do any of these calculations and then create a calculated measure or a calculated dimension. We use calculated fields. So this will help us, when you have to create some small calculations within the Tableau based on the underlying data, and then use that in your visualization or use that for any different purpose, either filter or sorted by that or something of that kind. That's why we would use calculated fields. So I'll just take you through a couple of examples of creating calculated fields. So it's very easy to create a calculated field now. So if you can, there are different ways of doing it. One is go to the analysis and then you have this create calculated field. So you can just click on that, or you can actually, if there is any particular dimension or measure that you want to create your calculated field on, so you can do this. So I will go and right click and then create a calculated field. So it will by default pick that measure for me in the formula bar, in the formula section. So I can just call this profit calculated. So I can do it again. So what all can you do in this calculated field? Like what all formula can you apply? So that those functions, there are like Tableau provides us a lot of built-in functions that you can actually use, and these are the functions. So the functions are listed here. So you can actually see all of them here, or if you want to see each by group, like you want to see only the number of functions and all those things, you can do that, by selecting these drop down. But then it gives you a lot of options, with which you can create a lot of different calculated fields, like anything that you want to do with type conversion or aggregate, you want to do some aggregations or pass through. So now I would just go ahead and create a logical thing, so I just want to see if profit is greater than. So it is a basic, it's very simple a language, if you have used any of the programming languages, the syntax is pretty similar to that, So this calculated field, see, I have not specified what type of field it is, what is the data type for it. It will automatically pick that up based on what conditions, what value I'm giving here within the conditions of the if statement. So you see here the profit calculated field has come up in the dimensions section. So now if you want to see what the value is, you can just drag it here. So there's most of the thing we only have no because of the condition that I have given. So if you want to change the conditions, you can just go here, sales, and then you have this, and you want to see what are the customer segments, which is the customer name. You can just drag your customer name here. Then it will tell you who are the guys, who've got. It just groups you again. You can use this calculated field to find out who are the customers who've got, and you can move this around and put it next to the customer, or then put it before that so that it groups the customers based on the calculated profit, so whether profit is greater than a million or not. So this is how you can create a calculated field. And what I was trying to tell at that point of time is that you saw that I did not actually specify any what kind of field data type it should be. It actually picks it up by based on this value that I'm trying to pass into the calculated field based on the condition here in the if statement. So that's how these are a very simple calculated field that I created, and we could use it in a very in different ways, So, and one more thing that I wanted to say was, so you see here this tick mark and saying the calculation is valid. So if I don't do that, if I give something else, so here the moment I delete one or two columns, one of the three letters, it gives me that there's an error in the calculation. So it says syntax missing. So it basically guides you with messages as to what could probably be wrong. Here, if I try to pass a numeric value, it tells me that expected a string type found integer. So what it does is, it comes from this end. It calculates the condition, and it sees that then I am passing a in the then statement. After the then, I'm passing a value which is of a string type. But then after the else, I'm trying to pass an integer. So it tells me that, and then I can actually go ahead and change that as I want. So it's pretty good in that way. It will help a lot. And then even if you want, like, it gives you all the syntax how you could go about doing this if condition or various different functions that it provides you. So based on your requirement or what kind of calculator field you want to build, you could use one of these functions and come up with that. So now I've just changed it. Now it says 90 and then greater than 100. So this is basically how we can create a calculated field. So again, let me just summarize. So calculated fields are created when we would like to either put inside our view a field which is not available right away from the database, so that we need to create it based on a certain condition. Or it could be a business rule that is given to you in the requirement, or it could be a simple yes or no kind of a flag which we kind of built right now. So any of these things, could be used to create, and calculated fields could be used to create these kind of fields and then use them in your visualization. Okay, and the next topic is something called parameters. Parameters are very, very good feature, very nice feature which Tableau has, and it could be used in different ways. Let me show you here. Okay, so I'll just take a blank sheet here and then I'll show you what parameters are and how to go about using them. So when we say parameters, these are basically a static list of values. Okay, this is a static list of values which makes the users interact Tableau with Tableau and your visualizations using these parameters. So I'll just show you. So I'll create, so there again different ways of creating parameters. You can right click, come here and right click and create a parameter. So now let me create a parameter called, okay, we can set the type here, set a type, and you can set the current value, and then you can, these are the different formats, how you would want it to display, and then you have the values, what are the allowable values. I can either say anything is allowed, anything integer is allowed basically, and or I can go ahead and give a list there, or I can say it is a range, which is like a minimum of 0 to a maximum of 100, or I can change that to 2 to 100 or whatever. And then I can give a step size of 100, or if you want a step size of higher, like a 2, then we can give that as well. So let me say okay. So now you see there's a new parameter here which is called the order size. I can right click and there's something called show parameter control. Now I just do this and the parameter starts appearing over here. So you see this parameter has appeared here, and since it was a range and a step size 2, you can see that we've got a slider here and the step size is 2. So whenever I click the slider once on the left, it decreases by 2, or whenever I click it on the right, it increases by 2. So how do we use this? So this could be used in various different ways. So like I want to see now. Let me just give you an example here. There are different order IDs. So I say there are different orders, and then you see what's the product category here. Okay, then which region are they from, or rather, put this by region category. I'm going to say what the profit is. Okay, so this is a very plain, simple Tableau report that I've created. Then I want to say, and also like, or rather, I put the order size. And also I'll put the order quantity. I'll put the order quantity also in the text. So one more thing that you could notice is, in the earlier versions of Tableau, the text, the label, this is the label basically, or the text. So you could only have one value in the text. You could only have one value in the text. But now, starting from Tableau 8 onwards, you can have multiple values for a single row here. If you notice, there's only order number 3 here, which is for a central region, office supplies product category, but I'm able to show 2 different values against that. I'm basically showing the profit on the top and then the order quantity below that. So this is basically a feature that's given by Tableau, and we could use it based on our requirement. So now what I've done is I've just created this simple basic table, which gives me the profit and the order number here, order quantity here. And now let me go and create something, a basic calculator field here, where I'll say, okay, so see, just because I clicked on shift mode and I right clicked and said create calculator field, it's picked this up, but I don't want this now. I am going to create it on the order quantity. So it's very simple, and I just delete that from there and then go here down, pick up the order quantity. Yeah. Okay. I would say if the order quantity is greater than 20, then I call it a big order. Else I call it small order. Okay. So it's a simple calculator field that I've created, which tells me whether my order is a big order or not. You can find it here. So I'm just going to drag that and put that here. Now it's going to tell me whether my order was small or big based on this size here, the order quantity here. So let me just take this out from here so that I only have the order quantity so that it's clear. So I have the order quantity 6, and it tells that it's a small order, and that 50 it says big order, that's fine. So but if you see that this calculated field over here and the value that is appearing here, small and big, it's kind of static, because while defining the calculated field, what I have done is I have given this value, which is a hard-coded value over here. So tomorrow, if my definition of a big or a small order changes, I would have to actually go and make a change to the report itself here, right click, edit, and then change the value here, and then have that republished onto the server so that it is available for the users with the latest updated value. So to avoid that, what we could do is we could actually use a parameter here. So all I have to do is I'll just remove this, delete that, and I say greater than order size. Say okay. So now you would see this one changed. So it was a small earlier, now it became big because it is considering this number now to compare against the order quantity and give me the value. So if tomorrow my order size changes, I mean my definition of a big order changes, and if I say okay, it's actually a 20, 16 or 17 or whatever. So if I can go that there and then I can change it so that you can see the change happening. So and if I don't want this slider, I can just go. I can just go and say type in. So now I can go and type in. But you remember it's still a range and it's still a step of 2. I'll have to always give a step of 2, and it is again also, yeah. So when I give 50, you see everything has changed to small order way. What I was just explaining was about the parameters and how we can use the parameters, which is actually a static list of values, and how we could use this to make our dashboard or a report interactive and change certain things in the view based on whatever value that you select over here. That is an advantage of having a parameter. So it could be used in various different ways. So there's one thing that I would like to tell here is that about filters and parameters. We can actually make a parameter work like a filter. But when I say a filter, whenever we create a filter, so I will just show here, what I'm doing. So when I go and put this guy here and say use all, or just select and then say all here. So what it's actually doing is going back to the database and finding all the different values that come up for in this column, all the distinct values in this order priority column, and then brings that up every time we use this filter. So it works fine. The filters work fine when the data set you're working with is not a huge data set, and also you do not have a large number of distinct values which you would want to filter on. So that till then it works fine. When I'm working on an Excel sheet, or even for that matter a database, relational database, where it's the number of values is number of records is probably like in a few thousands or close to 100,000 or something like that, it still works fine. But then when it becomes big, that's when actually we run into trouble if you're using a filter, because every time you want to use the filter, it would go refresh, get the values from the data source again and then show it to you. So one way how we could avoid it is again by using parameters. So what I'll do here is, I'll just show you another way of creating a parameter. I'll just go and click on this order priority guy and I say create a parameter. So what it's done for us is that it's created this parameter, which says critical and all those things, which whatever values are available, whatever distinct values are available for that column, it just picks that up and puts it into this list. Okay, and now I have created this list here. So this is again a static parameter list, and I say okay. So you would see the parameter list in the parameter lists over here. You list over here. You see this new parameter that's come up. Now I can use this as a filter. So what I would do is I would go here. I'd put the order priority filter. I'd say use all. Okay, and then I'll go to the condition here, and there are different conditions. So one is by the we were looking at that, like yesterday by field. You say where the sum of profit is this much or greater than a value or something like that. So that is one condition that you could provide to it. And the second would be here, which says by formula. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to click here and say, just going to click this one here. So I would say order priority equal to order priority parameter. Okay. So now I'd go ahead and say show parameter control. Now I've chosen only the critical orders. Okay, let me bring this guy here so that we can. Yeah, so you can see now there are only critical orders that are displayed here. Remember, this is not a filter. I did not do a show quick filter here. What I've instead done is created a parameter here, use this parameter within the filter, and then I am showing this parameter to appear. I'm making that parameter to appear on the view for us to do the filtering. So to an end user, it doesn't matter. For him, it's still a filter. I'm giving him a drop down to actually go ahead and filter his data. How I'm handling it internally, internal to Tableau, it's different. It's not exactly a filter, but I'm using a parameter and using it as a filter. So what this does is actually, as I was saying earlier, so when you have a big list or a large data set, whenever I click on a filter, if it was a quick filter here, whenever I would do this, it would go and fetch all that and it would slow down things. But since it's a parameter and it's a static list, it doesn't do all those things and it just picks up from it is within Tableau desktop here. We have it right here. So it just shows me the list and I can go ahead and do all the things, different things here. So this is one way of using this parameter. So now you would see that I can only choose one of these order priorities. What if I want to see all of them? Unlike in quick filters, I can go and say show all or change it into different types of filters, but parameters would not allow us. So for that, what we would have to do is just go here and add a value saying all. Select all as a current value. See, okay, now you would see everything disappearing because there's nothing called all, because we don't really have an order priority called all. So now I have selected all, and that all comes here and it compares against the order priority, and it doesn't find anything called all and then fails. So here we would have to do now a condition. So what I would do is if I'd say order priority equal to, if my order priority parameter is equal to all, then show me all the priorities. Else show me only the ones that I'm selecting from the parameter. Right? Okay. So what I've just written a simple formula here which tells if my order priority parameter I'm selecting all here, then show me everything that is there in this field. Okay, don't filter it on anything. And if I've selected anything else other than all, then it has to be one of those priorities, so then I'll say, then go ahead and filter it based on what I've selected in the parameter. And you see now all the priorities have shown up.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can we put anything for formula as long as we have the word then, else, and end, or is there another?
Yeah, right. I mean, the formula, it could be anything. So as of now, what I've been doing is I've been using only the if else condition, if then else. Mm-hmm. But then you can actually go ahead and write a whole lot of functions. You can do, it's in logical.
Yeah.
You can actually go ahead and write a case statement if you want, or you can write an if null, if I want to see if there are any null values, there are lots of times when we get null values in some of the fields, so I wouldn't want to show the null values. So what I would do is I would use if null, and then I would replace the null value with something else. For example, the example shown here is that if profit is null, then put 0 into it, that way.
Okay.
So those kind of things, we can use a lot of different calculated fields and create a formula, create function formulas. Yeah. So I will show a few of them as we go on. This here is an illustration of how you can use your parameters to create filters and then improve the performance. So this would come into the category where you are doing certain things inside your development box, so that you improve the performance of your dashboard. So now when I now this gives me flexibility of either seeing all or just going ahead and seeing only the ones that I want to, or the ones that I'm interested in. Okay, so one thing you should realize is that if you have something, considering that the order priority doesn't change that often, probably doesn't change that often under the database. Considering that fact, the parameter works just fine. But if there is some of the dimensions, which might change very often, which is like changes every week or changes every month or something like that, then it is very difficult for us to go with a parameter, because remember, parameter is always a static list of things. So if there is any changes, if there is any change in the order priority in the database, that will not reflect here, because parameter is a static value, list of static values. In such a case, we would have to then go ahead and make the change to the Tableau workbook, wherein add this new value in the parameter and then use that again. So that is why we should always remember, something like when we design a dashboard, we would see if there is something like a department or a subcategory, subcategory, there might be a lot of subcategories added or deleted, or they keep changing. But departments generally are at a very high level, and then they would stay the same for like a year or two or something like that. So department is a good candidate for us to go ahead and create a parameter for our and use that in our filters. But something like a subcat or something like, which is at a lower level, or a product name, it doesn't really make sense for us to go and use that in this way, because product name might keep changing and things like that. So whichever needs lesser maintenance, those dimensions, we can actually use this. Okay. So this is one good feature which Tableau provides us, which makes it all the more interactive. With giving you the typing values and helping the users put in their values and then change the view accordingly. Okay, so this is the same example that I've given here, wherein the small order and big order thing, so this is just an example of, so this is a screenshot of what we were doing just now. Okay, and the next topic that I would like to talk about is actually the graphs and views. This is what actually Tableau is meant for, creating different graphs and different views that would come into play. So like Tableau supports a lot of things. It gives you a text table, bars, lines, continuous lines. Continuous lines are basically those trend lines, and then you have the scatter plots, and then you have maps. So these are at a very high level the charts that are supported. There are a lot of other things, which are like either variations of these charts or a new different types of charts which Tableau supports. It supports around natively. It would support around 23 types of charts. Which by natively what I mean is, I'll show you here. So this list here, it's around 23 charts you can use based on your data. Apart from this, you can also build your own custom charts, but that will require some different, putting in some different logic and then creating some fields and all calculated fields and all that to create any different kind of chart that you want apart from that are already available. This table here actually, it just tells us like how do we create a different kind of each of a different kind of charts. So I will just probably talk about this individual and the blended axis in the time. Okay. So if you notice, whatever we've been doing till now, it mostly has been in the bar charts. So bar chart is a very that's a very commonly used chart in most of our illustrations, and dashboarding, we use a lot of bar charts because that clearly gives us an idea about whatever we are trying to portray, either sales or the profit or discounts or whatever. So let me do this here quickly. I'll put a chart. So this is why it's very simple, even if it gives a very easy view, which you can find out like what's making the most profit, what's making the least profit, and all those things. But if you want to go for a different chart type, you can actually use this show me here, and it will actually tell you, see, based on whatever data you pulled in to the row and the column, it will tell you what type of charts can you actually go ahead and create using this. By default, if you see Tableau, it actually highlights something, see this bar chart is highlighted. What that means is for the data that I have in the view right now, this bar chart is the best possible view that I can build with it. That's just a prompt that Tableau gives you, that okay, probably a suggestion kind of a thing, which says okay, go ahead with this one. This is the best suited for the data that you have right now. But you can actually go ahead and change it, so try to come up with different kinds of graphs. This is called a stacked bar chart, so these are all different variations of the bar chart. So let me see now. If you see here, the lines are actually not highlighted. That's because whenever you're trying to do something with the lines, you always need to have at least one date field. I mean, it needs a date field basically, because whenever we're putting a line, what we're ideally doing is trying to see the trend.